Welcome to the Happiness Podcast. I'm Dr. Robert Puff. I live in Southern California, and a lot of Southern Californians during the weekend go over to Vegas, have a weekend getaway, and just to enjoy themselves. And besides the shows, the good food, and all the beautiful resorts that are there, there's one other thing that draws people to Vegas, and that's gambling. I remember years ago about hearing a story of a man who was working in the corporate world, and he was just done. He was exhausted, he was worn out, and he just wanted to enjoy life with his wife. So he quit his job, sold his home. Together they bought a motorhome, and they were going to travel around the United States for the rest of their lives, living on his savings and really just savoring the beauty of life. Well, the first destination on their trip was Vegas. And when they get there, the husband gets tired and decides to go to bed. But his wife, who is very excited for their new adventure of life, decides to stay up and just gamble a little bit longer. Well, when he wakes up in the morning, he can't find his wife. And he goes downstairs and finds her. And she's so upset, she's crying and she's just hysterical. And after he spends some time talking to her, he realizes that what she had done is she had gambled all night long and tapped into their retirement and everything that they had. And they were now broke. The only thing they had left was their motorhome. So after working 20 years saving for his retirement and now having enough to live on if they lived sparingly, it was all gone in one night. You may know someone or even yourself who could share a similar story. It's not that we're destined to have lives that are tough. It's just that it's so easy to make choices that have negative consequences. I mean, we're at a party, we're enjoying our friends, and we may have had a little bit too much to drink, but we're not worried about it. So we drive home, and then we get a DUI and deal with that. Or maybe we crash the car and injure someone, and we have a lot more serious consequences now to deal with. Life can change in a heartbeat, especially when we make fast and rapid choices. So one of the big lessons that I've learned in life is that happiness, the race of happiness, is won through slow and steady choices. You may have heard that phrase before, the slow and steady win the race of life. This is commonly cited for one of Aesop's fables, specifically the story of the tortoise and the hare. You probably remember that story, where the tortoise, who moves slow and steady, beats the hare, who's fast and nimble. And in today's podcast, what I'm arguing is that the slow and steady win the happiness race. But why is that? Why would I say that? Why does slow and steady work better than fast and unsteady? There are so many examples to illustrate this point, but let me use a simple one. Let's say some guys end up going to Vegas for a weekend, and they drink heavily and make choices based upon that drunkenness, that intoxication. These are choices that are made without any thought, without any premeditation, and they can be very bad choices. I mean, you don't have to be in Vegas to make these choices, but the point being is, when we're drunk and we don't think about what we're going to do, we're making fast and unsteady decisions. The decisions can be disastrous. When I was growing up, I had a distant relative of mine who was out partying one night, and he had a pickup truck, and he was with his girl cousin, and he was drinking too much, and she got in the back of his pickup truck without any cover. Well, he ran into a ditch, she flew out, hit her head, and she died. And he actually had to go to prison for that for several years. And as you can imagine, he's been living with the consequences of that very fast and unsteady decision ever since his cousin died. Or on the fiduciary front, think about the highest paid profession in the United States. I mean, there are people that make more than this group, but they do make the most, and that's surgeons. And if you know anything about the education of a surgeon, it's 4 years of college, and then it's 4 years of medical school, and you better do well in both those programs, and then it can be anywhere from 5 to up to 9 years of residency and fellowships before they even begin practicing full time. Or if you meet someone who's in really good shape, they definitely didn't get there overnight. They've worked at it for years, particularly if they're older, and they're still in really good shape. And these same principles are exactly the same when it comes to happiness. Happiness takes work, It takes effort, and you have to keep working at that throughout your life. One of the ingredients of happiness is a positive mindset. And it's very easy to get it caught up into a negative mindset. We see it all around us. If we watch the news, it's just prevalent. But people to develop a happiness mindset work on that and actively participate in looking at things through eyes that don't cause them unhappiness, but create peace and happiness in their hearts. And that's work. And that's effort. And they work at it through practice, through steadily watching their thoughts, realizing what their thoughts are, and then working towards changing their thoughts, trying to understand what they're in control of, the reactions, and what they're not in control of, often many things that are external to them. And given that they practice this slow and steady, what they find is with time, that becomes their knee-jerk reaction. So when something negative happens, they don't see it as negative. They may see it as a growth opportunity or a way of practicing patience. It's all how we see things. But ultimately, happiness is based on a slow and steady pace throughout life. You don't rush into things. When we rush into things, I think we're going to get into trouble. And a lot of bad things can happen. When we take our time and we pause, then we can reflect on the pros and cons of what's before us, and then make good decisions based upon what we discover, perhaps discussing it with friends that we trust, and exploring the options we have available to us and choosing the best one. People that develop a happy, peaceful life go more slowly. They are like the tortoises of life. They enjoy life, but they're not rushing through life. They're not going from one thing to another as quickly as they can. It's more as if they're savoring every breath and enjoying life. And when it comes time to make decisions, they rarely rush. They pause. And they say, okay, what are the pros, what are the cons of the decision before me? And how do I make it so that the choices that I make are good ones? And when they know they have good decisions in place, for example, I think a couple of the good decisions that people do that are happy is they're probably going to be meditating pretty often on a regular basis, and they're going to be exercising on a regular basis, because these two factors help create a happy lifestyle. They're probably not going to drink too much. They're probably going to eat pretty well. Again, it's because these two steady practices create overall health. And it's easier to be happy when we're healthy than when we feel miserable. I travel quite a bit, and I enjoy traveling, but the practices I have at home look pretty much the same when I'm traveling. I still meditate, I still exercise, I still eat well. I don't try to control things that are out of my control, but I do focus on keeping a positive mental attitude about the things that happen in my life, because I believe there's always something to look at that's beautiful, and there's always a way to see something that could be irritating as an opportunity, as just something that I can see beauty in. There's just always something beautiful to be with. Of course, there can be exceptions to rules, but it's more of an overall practice that we discover what things bring joy to our hearts, and then we do them on a regular basis, things that we can control, and then working towards creating a beautiful life each and every day, no matter what's happening in our lives. When we develop this skill, again, it may not impress anyone else, because happiness definitely isn't about impressing other people. It's about being happy with what's happening right now. And rarely does that have much to do with getting the praise of anyone else. It can often get the opposite, even disgust. What do you mean you're going to go to your room and meditate right now? What about this great party that we're having? What do you mean you're not going to work extra hours to get that great promotion that we're offering you because you want us to go home and be with your family? What do you mean you're going to go on vacation? If you worked more, you could make more money and buy a nicer house or a better car. There are very specific skills to developing a good life. And once we discover them, we have to practice them, slow and steady, and practice them every day. It's so much like physiology. People that tend to stay healthy throughout their lives work at it. They do throughout their lives. It's the same way with happiness. There are specific things that we have to do to be happy. And when we do these things, we will find happiness. What's hard about it is our slow and steady steps towards happiness are not going to get the praise of a lot of people. It may make us happy, but it may not make anyone else happy with us. And the other thing is the thrills of life. We may not seek them as much anymore. We may not choose to get together with our friends and get totally plastered to have a good time. Now, mind you, I believe there are a lot of thrills in regards to happiness, like the thrills of watching a beautiful sunset, or the thrills of hearing birds sing in the trees. Or this past weekend, I was out and about and I ran across this homeless person who had this very cute dog. And I stopped and I asked her if I could pet her dog, and she said yes. And this dog was adorable. He was super sweet, and we spent a lot of time together. He was kissing me and I was petting him. And I know he was homeless, so I did afterwards clean myself up. But it was a lot of joy just enjoying this cute little dog and giving time and attention to this person who is struggling. There are so many ways we can find beauty and peace in life, but it may not always be thrilling. It is thrilling in the sense of it's wonderful, but it may not have the same thrills as what the world is used to. But when we develop a slow and steady pace towards happiness, what we'll find is all around us are so many beautiful things that we can engage with, that we can enjoy. But we have to stop making fast, rash decisions. I do think they can lead to a path of unhappiness. When we need to make changes in life, let's pause. Let's take our time. Let's talk to people that we trust before we make too many big decisions, so that when we do, we know it will be the right decision. And when we have decisions in place that are good, we just keep doing them until our last dying breath. Knowing that these things are good for us, we do them every day. It's just that steady rhythm of self-care, of self-love, that creates a good life. We can do this. We can all have beautiful lives. It takes work. It takes effort. But I believe if each one of us strives towards this, in a slow and steady pace, we will win the happiness race. Thank you for joining me on the Happiness Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the podcast, please go to happinesspodcast.org. And until next time, accept what is, love what is.